If big money wants to push NIO stock down to $3.70 or that price range, is it possible in the short term? And I'm talking the next couple of weeks. It's possible, but we actually got some good news that I want to share in this video that makes me think maybe, just maybe, we're going to see stock price action turn positive and maybe even a new uptrend for NIO stock short term. So maybe we won't have to see that happen, but I want to talk about both scenarios and things I'll be tracking along the way. Also, and yes, I started with, this is the rendition of the thumbnail that I created because I don't know if you've ever noticed this, but pre-market, sometimes you'll see what surely looks like high frequency trading. That's the HFT reference that I've got here. And that's when maybe algorithms, computer preset, controlled buying and selling is going on. This sort of consistent patterns when I see it. I always kind of think that. I'm like, oh, I guess the computers are running things right now. And so it's just in my mind, but here's a list of the funds, the institutional investors who have short positions in NIO. And the one I'm going to highlight is the one I called the suspicious short several years ago. That's Citadel. Citadel is a market maker. They also have had a short position in NIO since dating back to, I believe, at least when I caught and saw it and talked about it in a video, it was the fall of 2021. And in that video, I said, hey, this is something to keep an eye on. Back then, this is the NIO stock price trading in the roughly $40+ price range. And since then, we've seen a spike on the FTDs in these recent years, along with the price coming down. And as the trading volume on the daily side of things for NIO has also gone down with sentiment going down, I think it's just been easier for some of the shorts to control price action. And so with that in mind, it's just stuff I kind of track and keep some awareness of. But I don't want to stop there because there are some behavioral patterns that also come into play. Good news, and this is the FTD data where there could have been naked shorting going on. This is represented by these white lines that could be a powerful indicator that stock price suppression has been in play. And it's not a surprise for me when I see the price, which is represented by the yellow down with these spiking, heavily condensed white lines, the FTDs possibly being represented there, spiking. And so with that, the most recent data we had was the last part of, or most of the last part of December. And it actually didn't have any big spikes. And so that means maybe, just maybe, we're getting close to this thing turning around. I won't be surprised if we see firms like Citadel go long at some point. So maybe we see that even here in this year of 2025. But I want to kind of go back in reverse from the most recent filings. Some of the things that also I sort of track and monitor. This is some of the fines that were levied against two different institutional investors, both of whom have short positions in NIO. And in the case of Citadel, since I referenced them and have been talking about them for the last few years, Citadel inaccurately reported data fields for approximately 42.2 billion equity and option order events. As a market maker and as a short in certain companies, that would seem to give them an advantage on short-term price action, which is one of the reasons I'm glad I remain long-term in my focus. I just track the short-term stuff to try and learn, help raise awareness for myself and maybe with others. IMC is another one that has a short position in NIO. So they were also hit for over 21 billion inaccurate equity etiquette, not in play here, equity and options orders. And then how about if we go back a little bit further? And so now, I'm sorry, I didn't cite that. That was early 2024, I believe, when that was reported. So now we're going back in time. This is September 2023 when this was published, and it was from earlier. So again, we're going back in time. But the point in the behavioral pattern that I want to recognize and have awareness of is that this stuff has gone on for many, many years. So I just want to know that, okay, short-term stock price can be impacted by some of these things. Again, we've got Citadel Securities this time for violating the order marking requirements of short sale regulations. This is, as a market maker, they're supposed to not do this, but apparently they did. They violated a provision of Regulation SHO or Reg SHO. This is the regulatory framework designed to address abusive short selling practices. So the records are routinely used by regulators to supposedly keep the markets honest and keep, let's say, retail investors from getting taken advantage of. And yeah, in this case, they're talking about over a 5-year period. It was estimated that Citadel incorrectly marked millions of orders. So again, this is kind of a nod for me, at least the way that I see this stuff and think about it is in the short term, who knows if we're even seeing true price action. So that's all I want to know, is have that awareness. This is algorithm trading breaches. This was actually in South Korea from a couple years ago. I've highlighted this before in videos, so I'll just link all this and you can check things out for yourselves as you wish. Moving right along and going back a little bit further, Citadel Securities paying $22 million for misleading clients about pricing trades. Here it is, the highlighted part that I have. Citadel Securities executes approximately 35% of the average daily volume of retail equity shares traded in the US markets. Now, this is not the most current data, but that's a big piece of the market, especially if we're talking about retail investors not recognizing that they might not even be seeing true price action as it plays out. Again, a nod to why I think it makes more sense to stay long term with your focus, or at least with mine. That's what I'm doing. Hey, you do what you want, whatever it is. Good for you. God bless you. I hope you win. Hope we all win. This is the other one. And this is the one that I think is kind of fun and ironic, maybe, because Citadel has short positions in not just NIO, but also some other Chinese stocks like Alibaba, a very profitable company. And we've also seen recent FTD spikes with Alibaba, again, a very profitable company. So with their price also being down on the stock pricing side of things relative to what we've seen, I just think this is interesting. We're talking back even further about, I think it was 2015, when maybe this big fine by China was levied against Citadel Securities. They were banned from even trading in China for about 5 years. So for me, it's kind of big picture, as it always is. And some of these details or short-term things are just indicators that I use. I just want to have this awareness that you've got firms and funds like this that have short positions and maybe even predatorily target certain companies. Let's face it, if the negative news narrative towards China and Chinese stocks is easy to profit off of, and if you're a market maker and you have short positions in certain Chinese stocks and you feel like you can make profit on the short term or daily side of things, whether you're employing high frequency trading, algorithmic trading, whether you're mismarking orders, whether you're just taking advantage of retail investors, it's probably pretty easy for them to do. But as I said before, I just won't be surprised if or when we see companies like Citadel eventually go long on NIO. And I'm just wondering if we're going to see it happen here in this year of 2025. And those are the things that, along with, and now we're going to go back to this because I want to zoom out on the FTD data. Since we got that, most recent data, this is the full history of NIO stock, 3 time frames as I look at it. The very early couple of years with the listing for NIO from 2018 to about 2020, when it was heavy on the shorting side of things. And certainly with the FTD spiking, those white lines so much higher even than what we've seen recently. But that was at a point where it wasn't very clear if the company was going to, make it, whether they were going to go bankrupt. I think there was a point where maybe the shorting got more intense as there were questions about NIO making it. I frankly didn't become aware of NIO and start my research until 2020. So I was kind of in this time frame, and I didn't recognize when we saw this meteoric rise from NIO stock with the stock price action, and that the things like the FTDs dropping off and the correlation, and also the sentiment with hundreds of millions of shares of NIO being traded on the daily side of things could impact and significantly impact stock price. So we probably saw a short squeeze during those, I'd say the 2 years of 2020 to 2021. And so then NIO goes up to over $60. Again, as I referenced earlier, it was over $40 when I did the video and said, hey, heads up, this is something to monitor and watch with the Citadel suspicious short getting involved in NIO. That was late 2021. So I think it was right in here. And what we've seen is a resurgence of the FTDs over these last few years. The negative news narrative, which is ongoing, at least to this point, with Chinese stocks and China in general. And fun fact, I am watching, I'm tracking to see what the TikTok ban may or may not do and shift with respect to young consumers in the US. I'm already seeing some things that I think are actually going to play out in favor of Chinese smart EVs in the US. But I don't know how regulation, obstacles, all that stuff will go. If how the countries will work together, China and the US in the future. So this is all stuff that I'll be kind of curious to track and monitor. But the most recent data, which kind of aligns with this more recent of those three sort of time frames, you've got, obviously, like I said, the one where NIO was maybe not even going to make it as a company, heavy shorting, looking like it was playing out, stock price down. And then you had the short squeeze and NIO stock up for a while. And then there, maybe the rejoining or aligning of certain forces and entities to start shorting NIO. It was also in this time frame where, there were these, in the European market, there were these triple leverage and even, more leverage that could be taken to basically equate into short positions against certain companies and stocks like NIO. And so with that, maybe there was an alignment there. I don't know. Again, I just want to have the awareness and pay attention. But then this most recent sort of, I would say, 3-year trend is now kind of what we're looking at, with negative news narrative and the sentiment being bad, which now we're just talking about the three things at the bottom of the screen. With that sentiment as the number 3 indicator, it's pretty easy to just watch and see, if the big channels on YouTube are not talking about NIO stock, then it hasn't reignited people's interest yet, or they're not that aware of it yet. And then in the comment section, you still see a lot of negativity. Even within the NIO community, there are people who frankly have been to this channel so many times and still, I don't know if they're paying attention to the research, or maybe they just zone out. Maybe I'm that boring. Maybe they're not seeing all the things that I'm digging up and sharing. But it just seems like even within the NIO community, people are being more reflective of the price action and sort of this downtrend that's been ongoing over the last few years. But that is exactly, for me, that's an indicator of sentiment. So that probably needs to change. I do think there's an excellent chance in this year of 2025 that will change. I also think, as we now have the most recent FTD data through most of December, that the FTDs are a little bit dropping off, at least on the daily side, with individual reportings not spiking. However, there is still, just looking at the screen, I'm looking at it right now. I mean, they're obviously, we are not in a time frame like we were here with the FTDs dropping off. There's a lot more congestion over here. And so when that changes, when we see those really drop off, are we going to see a correlation with the NIO stock moving up and moving up aggressively? Now, as far as the $3.70 level and that kind of price range, one of my thoughts was, if there is low trade volume, which also has been an indicator in these most recent months, there's only been one day since the most recent earnings that NIO actually traded over 100 million shares. And on that day, NIO stock went up. So if there's an alignment of that, of the daily trade volume being an indicator of stock price action, then do we see an uptick on the trade volume? Do we have to wait for, let's say, sentiment to shift, more people to be interested and talking about NIO again? Is it going to take profitability first? That's been my view all along. Profitability, a good thing. I want to see it. But these are just things in my mind. If we don't see big volume and big money wants to push this price down, yeah, I think we could see $3.70. But based on that recent data reveal on the FTD side, and the fact that the volume has been low, and maybe they could have messed with it more if they wanted to, but apparently haven't, at least knock on wood, not these last couple of days. We'll see what happens with the inauguration, maybe even contributing to a positive shift in sentiment towards China and Chinese stocks. Let's see what happens. But drop it in the comments. I want to hear from you. Thanks for sticking around to the end. Have a great day. See y'all again very soon.